guys. Yep. Come on, lay down. Good morning, everyone. How we doing?
Good. How are you?
Doing good, thanks. Happy Monday. We're gonna give it just one more minute. We don't have very many people in. Miss Julie, how's life going?
Are you talking to me?
I am talking to you. Good morning.
Oh, it's good.
Good.
Just
How's
got a
things
beef
big
unit.
unit?
Yeah. How's your life going?
Pretty good. Pretty good. Got a little snow last night. Not very much though, so that makes it nice. It's just gonna continue to stay muddy, which is nice.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. What'd you
Everyone
guys
loves
get down there?
Well, it's raining right now, actually.
Oh, good. Cool.
Yeah. So it's not too bad.
That's good. How's calving going?
Good. We've had a few hiccups, but we're trying to get it figured out.
Oh, just like cows not taking calves or what?
No, we have one that we think had twins, but another cow is taking the twin. And we thought so we tagged it to one cow, and then that cow ended up calving like 3 days ago. So we're trying to figure out whose calf it actually is, but she's nursing both calves. So.
Oh.
Yeah.
She wants
It's
to
kind of
be
weird.
super mom.
Yeah.
Wait, Macy. Gosh, dogs were loud and obnoxious. Well, hopefully they get it figured out. I know we've had a couple of. Just a second. Hey, stop it. Go lay down. Dogs are causing chaos this morning. Sorry. Yeah, we've had a couple of those issues too, but it's been in heifers. It hasn't been in cows. So
yeah,
we'll hopefully get it figured out.
Yeah.
Cool. All right, guys. Well, I think this is us for today. So we're going to go ahead and get started. We are recording. And so there's a few things that we're going to work through today. And one of those is going to be through some poll everywhere questions. And so let me drop the link in the chat for today as soon as I can get it copied. All right, so there's the link. And we're gonna go ahead and ease into it with just a few questions to kind of jar your brains a little bit. So I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen with you. All right, so first things first, how did we do this week with chapter 3 material, or last week, I guess it was. So chapter 3, male anatomy material. And I forgot what kind of question this was. So hold on just a second. Let's go back here. There we go. All right, so you guys can just throw comments in. It went good, it went bad. I think there you can even put emojis in if you want. Good. Great. More detail. That's what this class is all about, is the little nuances and detail that can really help to make big differences in efficiency and in fertility and those type of things. Good. Female anatomy was a bit easier. That does not surprise me very much. I'm sure there's more than one of you that feel that way. So we tend to spend a lot more time in animal science on female anatomy because it's not that there's more intricate parts, there's just so much more interaction between anatomical structures, hormones, etc. And so female anatomy can be a little bit harder to understand, and so we tend to spend more time on it. So it doesn't surprise me at all that you may be more familiar with the female. And that's going to be kind of the same for this class as well. We're going to spend really essentially 2.5 chapters solely on male anatomy. And so this was one of them. The other one is going to be chapter 10 when we get to spermatogenesis. So great, great, great. These are great responses. And then let me know, guys, whether you just speak out or dump it into the chat. Are you able to get into Poll Everywhere okay? It looks like the majority of you are. If you're having trouble, let me know and I can try to troubleshoot it from this side. Good, good. Okay, I like that people are learning things they didn't know before. That's great. Fantastic. Okay, well, that is uplifting to hear. We're gonna spend some time here in just a few minutes going back through some questions as a review. And then we're also gonna spend some time walking through a couple of questions on the female anatomy quiz from week 2, as well as a couple of questions that came up on the self-study that I'm seeing some inconsistencies on. And so I want to make sure to spend some time on those as well. All right, we're going to go ahead and bounce to the next question here. All right, so in the absence of the SRY gene, it will defect into what sex? So the absence of the SRY gene will default into which sex? All right, so we're gonna just take about a minute here. So if you guys have been through genetics with Dr. Smith or myself in previous semesters, you will also learn about this concept in chapter 4, which is sex determination of the genetics test or the genetics text. So we spend some time discussing the genetic basis of sexual development as well. So hopefully this won't be the only time you'll see this. Chat. Oh, just me. Okay. All right. So we're going to go ahead and lock in these responses. All right. So good. Most of you guys came up with female. That is correct. So the SRY gene is going to be located on the Y chromosome. And so if the SRY gene has some sort of mutation, or the Y chromosome has a mutation and the SRY gene isn't even associated with that Y chromosome, the default sex system will take place, and that default system is female. So in the absence of the SRY gene, SRY protein, the female reproductive structure will actually form in utero. All right, and you're going to learn more about that in chapter 4 of this week as well. So great. Okay, so let's go to the next question here. All right, so scrotal temperature needs to be blank degrees blank below body temperature to ensure sperm viability. So we'll give you a minute here as well. And so again, the first blank here is a certain number of degrees, and the second blank is the type of degrees, either Fahrenheit or Celsius. All right, about 10 more seconds. All righty. So we'll go ahead and lock in those responses. Okay, so great. You guys have got this. You didn't choose 10, which is awesome. So good job there. It is 5 degrees Celsius. Okay. So not 5 degrees Fahrenheit. So good job on that one, guys. All right. I think, let me just remind myself. Do we have one more? I think we have one more. All right. So I think this is the last one. And this one you can just text in. It's going to totally be anonymous. So what I want to know is if you guys have major questions left over about chapter 3 material. So specifically on the male side. So I'm going to give you a couple of minutes to do this as I start to change around where we're headed to next. Okay, great question. What would be different with degrees Fahrenheit lower scrotal temperature? All right, cool. This one I can actually show you really quickly online. All right, so our core temperature in cattle is about 101.5 degrees Fahrenheit, okay? So if we were to warm a sperm cell, or a semen straw, like we were doing artificial insemination, to where we would have to take a frozen straw of a bull's semen and thaw it, we would definitely want to make sure that we were within the proper range. And so we need that to be below the body temperature to ensure fertility. So if you heat up sperm at the body temperature of a male, or 101.5 degrees Fahrenheit, it's going to cook those little sperm cells. And so just to show you, this is a quick conversion tool that's you can find on Google. So if we looked at the difference between 5 degrees Celsius, that would be plus or minus 41 degrees Fahrenheit. All right. So just keep that in mind a little bit. And so the two major degrees of temperature really play an important part here. So just keep those things in mind. All right. And that kind of did not make sense. So let me go back to poll everywhere. Sorry, I've got too many things open this morning. Okay. Great. Okay, cool. So I'm gonna just leave that active in the background. So if you guys do have other questions that come up, you can dump them into that poll everywhere chat. This is where we are headed. And so I am gonna share with you just kind of a brief PowerPoint as far as where we're what we're gonna focus on today. All right, let me get this out of my way. There we go. All right, so we kind of worked through some poll everywhere questions. As far as due dates and stuff, this week, week 4, we are in chapter 4, which is all about embryogenesis. So how an embryo will develop after the fertilization process. And so this is a really key chapter to kind of understand the differences between sex and the development of the different sexes. And so you guys will work through both or a series of lectures that have been posted in Blackboard, and you will work through you'll work through a quiz as well about embryogenesis. And so that quiz is going to be due this Friday, the 19th, by the end of day. And the end of chapter 4 this week will actually kind of represent kind of the end of the fundamental basic information that really build the foundation for the rest of the class. And so next week, we're going to start in on chapter 5, and we're going to spend 2 weeks on chapter 5 because it is all about endocrinology or hormones. Okay. And so those two things go hand in, or those two terms are synonymous with one another. And hormones tends to be kind of a big brawly chapter. So we're going to step it out and we're going to do 2 weeks of endocrinology, and we may do some additional study sessions as well, because the hormone aspect of reproduction can be very complex to master. And so we're going to take 2 weeks to work through chapter 5 beginning next week. But this week on Friday, you guys have a quiz for embryogenesis or chapter 4 due. All right. Wrong keyboard. All right. So I just want to go through a couple of questions, and I'm going to use my tablet as well. So just stick with me because I'm going back and forth between screens on this end. But in the chapter 2 material, there were a couple of questions that I want to make sure to go back over, and we'll pick those up at the end. The one that I really want to spend some time on and give you guys a chance to ask questions about was the second question on the self-study, which was due last week. And so that question was about Lucky's journey, right? So if Lucky were a sperm cell and was deposited into a cow reproductive tract, what would be his journey? And we talked really briefly about this last week in the Zoom session, and I tried to bring together and highlight the concept that sperm cells are going to, in the cow repro system, are going to get off the bus at a certain spot, and their final destination is a certain spot. And what I am seeing in some of the self-studies and from week 2 quizzes is that we haven't mastered that concept yet. So I just want to step back through a couple of things really quickly, and please feel free to slow me down or stop me as you have questions here, okay? But if you could do it by just speaking up and unmuting yourselves, that would be great, because it's really hard to monitor the chat right now. All right, so with our female reproductive tract, we've got this figure from chapter 2 shown here on the screen. And so we've got the lateral view, which shows you kind of a side view of how the reproductive tract actually sits in the cow. And so keep in mind that this whole system is suspended by which ligament? So which ligament suspends this whole system here?
The broad ligament.
Yeah, thanks, Alex. That's the broad ligament. And so that broad ligament is a really essential piece to this whole puzzle, because it has the ability not only to hold in place the reproductive system when the female is not pregnant, but when she is pregnant and gestating and that calf gets bigger and bigger and bigger in the uterus, that broad ligament has the ability to hold that fetus up and suspended in the cow's body cavity as well. All right, so as we look at the lateral view, that's what it looks like from the side and how it's oriented within the female. What I want to spend some additional time looking at here is, hang on, let me go back and clear this stuff out, is also touching base on what the male anatomy actually looks like. And so this is a figure from your book, but it's been superimposed. And the reason for this is because I'm going to put these two pictures together in the next slide, and we're going to talk through Lucky's journey. And so with the male reproductive tract, which you guys spent a lot of time learning about this past week, we've got several structures here. So we have the testes, we've got the epididymis. Okay, the testes are going to be synthesized and developed in the testes. They're going to end up going, being secreted into the, sorry, hang on. Let me get that out of there. There we go. Okay, so if our testy here is where those sperm cells are going to be developed, that's a sperm cell, they're then going to travel to the head of the epididymis. Okay, and so then they're going to follow the epididymis. They're going to go through several different processes to become activated and fully fertile. Once we get into the body of the epididymis and then into the epididymal tail down here, this is where we see a lot of storage take place. And keep in mind that sperm cells that are in the tail of the epididymis are, for the most part, fully fertile at this point in time. So it's kind of cool if a bull or a stud or a boar or a ram die, and you can get a veterinarian there quickly before or directly after the animal has been killed or died or whatever, you can actually harvest sperm cells out of the tail of the epididymis and freeze them and still have viable sperm cells from an animal that has deceased. Okay, so after the sperm cells are in the epididymal tail, they are then going to be moving into the spermatic cord area here. And so the sperm cells are then going to start their journey through the rest of the reproductive system in the male. And this becomes important because this will usually start to happen when a bull or a male becomes excited and is, walking around behind a female. He knows that she's in heat, etc. And so Did that bounce me back? Yeah, that bounced me back. Hang on, I'll go back in just a second. I'm pulling something else up here. Do. Okay, so with hopefully it goes back to the right place. There we go. All right. So with the ductus deferens portion of the male tract, those sperm cells are then going to travel up through the secondary sex glands. So we've got the ampulla, the prostate here, that is going to be creating a whole lot of materials that are going to go along with the ejaculate that are going to come together and build the ejaculate, which is going to encompass those sperm cells as well, so that they can make a safe journey to the female. And so once those sperm cells go through and get packaged with the rest of the ejaculate materials, it's then going to proceed down through the penis and will be delivered into the female reproductive tract. And so let me get rid of all that stuff. And so I tried to put this together here for you guys, and I hope it's going to make some sense. So we've got our sperm cell that are going to be delivered into the vagina of the cow. And so let's review exactly what the question 2 was asking in the self-study. And so let me pull this up really quickly. There we go. Okay, so question 2 here asks, now that you know your female anatomy inside and out, answer the following. If you were a sperm, we'll call you lucky, that was just deposited via natural service into the cow's reproductive tract. So that's a key part of this question. Okay, so we know that we're dealing with the bovine species. Okay, so if Lucky was just deposited via natural service into the cow's reproductive tract, list the parts of the reproductive tract in proper order that you would travel through to fertilize the oocyte. All right, so we know that we're dealing with the cow. Okay, so we're just going to highlight that. And the other piece of information here is that we're dealing with a natural service scenario, okay, meaning that the bull is mounting the cow and breeding her, okay. This could be different if it said artificial insemination, okay. And so the reason that I want to bring attention to that is because the delivery point for natural service is the vagina, but the delivery point for artificial insemination in the cow is the uterus. Okay, so those are 2 very different drop-off points. But in the context of this question, we're dealing with the cow in a natural service scenario. All right, so let's go back to our scenario here. All right, so again, we've got our sperm cell. It's heading through the penis and is going to be deposited into the vagina of the cow. Okay, so that is going to be the first drop off point for Lucky. Lucky is then going to travel through the cervix, through the uterus, through the uterine horn, and into the oviduct. That is the end of Lucky's journey. So he will end at the oviduct. Right? So this is where fertilization will take place. So let's talk just really briefly about the oocyte. Okay, so here we have the ovary. The ovary has a follicle on it. Oh boy, I can't write today. Let me start over. My goodness, Casey. That follicle is going to ovulate, and we're just going to say that that is going to be the egg. Egg can also be called the oocyte. And that oocyte is going to be captured by the infundibulum of the oviduct and is going to be shuffled this way to the ampulla isthmus junction. Okay, so the sperm cell never makes it to the ovary. All right, and the oocyte by itself never makes it to the uterus. Okay, so fertilization is going to take place in the ampulla isthmus junction, and that's supposed to be a heart. That's where love takes place. All right. So relative to question number 2 on the self-study and one of the quiz questions during week 2, this is your answer here. Okay, so the sperm cell is going to be deposited in the vagina. It's going to travel through the cervix, through the uterus, through the uterine horn to the oviduct, and that is the end of its journey. All right, so now that it looks like a 2-year-old has written all over your screen with a lot of different crayons, what questions can I answer for you guys? Does this make this concept more clear?
Yes.
Okay, cool. Good, good, good. What questions do you have?
Can you repeat the process after fertilization?
So, sorry, I couldn't quite hear you. Can you repeat your question?
Yeah, can you repeat the process after fertilization?
So I didn't really go into the process after fertilization. Do you mean before fertilization by any chance?
Or what is the oocyte egg on the follicle?
The oocyte?
The oocyte,
Yeah.
yeah. Did you talk about
Okay, so let's see here. I wonder, let me just get rid of all of my drawings.
If you didn't, it's okay. I was just a little confused because I seen the follicle and the egg.
Nope. I think part of the confusion is because it's really small. So let me see if I can make this a little bit bigger. Maybe. think I just messed up my whole thing. That's okay. All right, so hopefully you guys are seeing this. We'll go back to purple, try to keep our colors the same. All right, so this guy right here is the ovary. On the ovary is going to be a follicle. The follicle is going to ovulate, so it's going to burst. That's bursting. And the egg or the oocyte will be captured by the infundibulum, which is the part of the oviduct that is closest to the ovary. And that egg is going to be shuttled down the oocyte or down the oviduct to the ampulla isthmus junction. And that is where the sperm cell is going to be waiting for it. And so here is where fertilization takes place. Is that what you were asking about?
Yeah, I was. Thank you.
Okay, cool. All right. Any other questions, guys? Okay, so I think we have a better understanding of the sperm cells trek through the female reproductive system. Okay, the other thing to just make sure that you guys have a really good handle on are what each one of these tissues are made up of, so their structure. So can you tell me what the vagina is made up of, the cervix, the uterine tissue, the oviduct, and the ovary? Okay, so that's a good way to kind of go back and review this type of stuff. It's really important to make sure that we have a good handle on the anatomy and the flow of the anatomy, because when we start talking about hormones, there's going to be hormones that actually have certain receptors in certain tissues. Okay, so whether it's cervical, vaginal, oviduct, uterine, etc. All right, so also keep in mind too that the brain, as well as the pituitary gland, are very much a part of this whole entire reproductive axis in both the male and the female. So a lot of hormones are going to be synthesized and secreted or made and dumped into the circulatory system from the brain and the pituitary as well. And they're going to have like targets down here in the reproductive tract. Okay. I don't see any questions for right now. So let's go ahead and talk really quickly about just 2 other questions on quiz 2, or sorry, the week 2 quiz about female anatomy that had lower scores than what I would like. The first one was, let me move this out of my way. Oh gosh, sorry. There we go. Was when palpating an ovary on a heifer or a cow, a follicle would feel like, and it was an open-ended multiple choice question. And the answer here is a water blister. So the reason that a follicle feels like a water blister is because in this figure here, here's our follicle. The follicle has a lot of follicular fluid in addition to cell mass. And so when you palpate it, the follicle feels more like a water blister and has a softer texture compared to a corpus luteum. So with the corpus luteum, that's going to be this guy down here. The corpus luteum has a mix of small and large luteal cells here that make up the entire structure. And there's only a little bit of open space at the cortex of that corpus luteum, and it's not filled with any fluid at all. And so that the CL is going to be a much firmer textured anatomical structure compared to the follicle. So CLs feel like pimples, follicles feel like water blisters. Any questions about that concept? All right. So last question that had lower scores than what I would have hoped was a true false question. So it asked, endometrial folds are associated with cow and sheep uteri. And so it was just a blanket statement. Okay, should have put a period there. So some keys here are endometrial folds. Okay, so we know that we're dealing with the uterus because the endometrial layer is going to be specific to the uterine tissue. Okay, the other piece of information here is the species, so cow and sheep uteri. And as mentioned a couple of times in the lecture series, cow and sheep reproductive structures are fairly similar to one another. And so the uterine tissue is going to be similar to each other as well. And so with cow and sheep tissue, they actually have cotyledons, not endometrial folds. So these guys have cotyledons. Endometrial folds are going to be associated with mares. Okay, so do I even want to attempt to draw this? We're going to try it. We're just going to go super generic. So these 2 circles down at the bottom are the uteri. So this is the mare, and this is a cow. All right, so in the mare, the fold or the tissue is going to have folds, longitudinal folds. Okay, all around it. And so these folds are going to be really central to production of hormones that are going to help keep that embryo moving around, because the embryo likes to bounce around in the uterus, which helps, which we'll talk about later on. It actually helps with maternal recognition of pregnancy. But in the cow, they have buttons. And these buttons are cotyledonaries. And they hold the placenta to the uterine wall. So the cow have cotyledons, the endometrial folds are going to be specific to the mare. Any questions there? All righty. Okay, let me just share my screen one last time with you guys, and we're going to go to Blackboard, make sure everybody's on the same page with where we need to be at. So in the Blackboard Start Here module, we are going to be down here in week 4. And you guys should have seen the email come out last Friday. All the information in the email is also in this week 4 briefing at the top of this page. You have an embryogenesis note guide, partial notes, and then you've got 6 lectures or 6 online lectures. They're pretty short, I think, for chapter 4 as well as this quiz, which is going to be due by end of day this Friday, February 19th. All right. That's all that I've got for you guys. Be on the lookout this next week in the weekly email. I'm gonna be listing a couple of internships that came up to my attention. One of them I'm actually putting together for Tehama County Cattlemen's Association. It's kind of a local politics type internship that is a year long. And so it enables you to take a full load of classes as well as do an internship. And then I also have several announcements for Bureau of Land Management range tech positions for this summer as well. So I'm going to put all of that into a big announcement on Friday. All right, that's all I got, guys. I will hang out and answer questions for just a couple of minutes, and then I need to jump over to beef class. And if you don't have any questions, we'll see you next week.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
Casey.
Thank you.